Yeah, he has done so much for us. He has done so much for me. I don't know about you. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. We're now in December, about entering 2020. Lord God, He's been faithful. You've been alive. Hearing the sound of my voice, having the eyes to view your TV and seeing us talk is enough to appreciate God. You might not have gotten everything that you wanted to get in the year 2019. Come on. By God's grace, before the year comes to an end, or even next year, as long as you are alive. After all, a living dog, they say, is better than a dead lion. There is hope. Be hopeful, and you're going to achieve that thing that you really want to achieve. Well, on this discussion segment, we want to take a look at the year 2019 in retrospect, the pains and the gains, or the gains and the pains of Nigeria, talking about economy and, of course, politics. Yeah, 2019, according to many persons, is like a year filled with so many events, so many activities, so many ups and so many downs. Some people are smiling, many are not smiling. You know, depends on the side of the divide you belong to. But the most important thing is that we are still alive and we are still one indivisible entity called Nigeria. With me here in the studio to really talk on this is a legal practitioner, a human rights activist, both local and international politics. He's well grounded. Join me to welcome Barrister Anakwe Mbanefo. Barrister, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And Happy New Year in advance. So 2019, let's take a look at the country before come down to Edo State, because it's all about nation building, the state of the nation. So tell me, Barrister, 2019, generally speaking, before I start picking it sector by sector, what are your opinions?
Yeah, well, 2019 was a year, you know, full with gains and pains. Gains in the sense that in every good situation or in every bad situation, somebody benefits from it. And but you know, you can talk about when you're talking about issues like this regarding the country, you have to appropriate it, the percentage of the people that actually benefited and the percentage of the people that actually complained or never benefited. You know, in my own opinion, I feel that 2019 Nigerians have never had it as bad as this before now. In the history of this country, politically speaking, economically speaking, we've never had it as bad as this. Because as far as this country is concerned, long before now, the issue of what people will eat has not become a problem, either under the military regime or under a civilian government. But this is the first time in the history of Nigeria where what people will eat now became a problem. It's a time when we are being told that a bag of rice is now selling for 28,000, 30,000 naira, and that the local rice is now selling for 24,000, 23,000 naira, as compared to 2015, when a bag of rice was selling for about 8,500 naira. And so it affected other commodities. The border closure, of course, you observed it for the first time in the history of Nigeria. Borders was closed.
Partially closed.
Yes, and that equally affected the inflow and outflow of goods and services, which also led to the shutting up of, the price of foodstuffs. And I had a feeling that if the federal government, felt that those borders should be shut down, we must have gotten food sufficiency before you can shut down the borders, so that we can protect the interests of our local farmers. So, but when the food production, cannot afford to match with the population of the nation, now it becomes a very wrong government policy for it to shut down the borders. And as good as it might sound, that probably the disallowing of foreign, goods, or agricultural products to enter the country was a way of trying to encourage the local farmers. We should also look at what we are producing, whether what we are producing is sufficient enough to feed the nation. So I think that added to the hardship of the people for the period for which, the year rode by. And then, politically speaking, I don't think we made any progress because the electoral...
Before we go into politics, because you're still talking about the economy, border closure, and of course putting food on the table. But from reports, farmers are smiling to the banks right now. Talk about Nigerian farmers. You were saying that things are not that cool, economically speaking. You want to bring the aspect of feeding the nation, so to speak. I don't think the partial border closure benefited Nigerian farmers.
Well, any government policy, like I said earlier, that did not favor at least 50% of the populace is a very bad policy. Because if you look at, I don't know when we did our census last, but if we were counting ourselves to be 180 million people, about, few years back, we also have to also consider the birth rate from the time Nigeria conducted the last census to date. And today, figuratively, one can see that Nigeria is even above 200 million people. And then what is the population of Nigerian farmers? And so Nigerian farmers, as it were, we have a very minimal, minimal number. And so if the policy affected Nigerian, if the farmers benefited from that policy, they will also be looking at the population of farmers in Nigeria. And we're talking about the overall interest of the people, the population, the percentage of the people that was affected by these policies is what we're looking at. So if you ask me, I will tell you that, a great percentage of Nigerians, suffered a lot as far as that issue of border closure was concerned. As far as the issue of, cost of food, agricultural products is concerned. And this is one Christmas too many, because before now, when it is Christmas, parents are happy that it is Christmas, children are happy that it is Christmas, that families will at least change their pot of soup and change their pot of stew, But this is one Christmas where everybody was complaining that one parent cook in the market is selling for as much as 8, 9, 10,000 naira. And then a bag of rice is costing about 28, 30,000 naira. And, you can't even talk about fish to prepare a pot of soup or even cow meat and all that. And so if you watch very well, you see that the people's mood was dampened because the money wasn't there to do these protests, especially at the time where the Nigerian worker was crying about minimum wage increase, which the state governors has made a heavy weather out of it. So even the minimum wage wasn't seen, the increased minimum wage wasn't seen, and for little they had, it couldn't be enough to be able to battle with the prices of agricultural products in the market. And that added to the hardship of the people. And up to now, the state governors are still not paying the new minimum wage.
All right, and now they'll be given 38th or 31st of this month to comply. Anyway, we want to go for a break. When we return, we'll continue with this discussion. Do stay tuned.
The world is a global village.
And that's because information travels beyond boundaries.
And on This Morning on ITV,
we guarantee unbiased analysis on topical issues
that will educate you,
entertain you.
So join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Every Sunday to Thursday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on your ultimate news and current affairs program on television, This Morning on ITV TMI. Join us.
Yes, It's this morning on ITV News and Current Affairs program, and today we're taking a look at the year 2019 in retrospect, the gains and pains of Nigerians. Talking about the economy and, of course, politics. Mind you, it's like a continuum, okay? My colleagues will take it from where I stopped. We're taking a look at the year. Should Nigerians jubilate? Should they rejoice? Should they sit back, ponder, and think of ways to make the country better? And just joining us right now in the studio is another legal practitioner, Barrister Thango Iluobe. Barrister, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Wisi. Compliments of the season to viewers.
All right. And we're taking a look at the economic aspect of 2019, and of course Barrister said that many Nigerians are not really happy about it. Talking about economic situation, he talked about the partial border closure, how it affected Nigerians negatively, and talked about also the distribution of wealth. Now let's focus on the economy first of all. How do we really fare as a nation in the year 2019?
Well, it's here and there. I believe that the nation has fared in such a way that is commensurate to what we have invested so far as a people. For some, it has been a year of bliss. For others, it has been a year of tough times. Now, depending on which side of the divide you belong. But I think for many Nigerians, most Nigerians would argue and believe that it was actually a tough time for them, considering the economic policies that were put in place by government and how it affected or it impacted on the economic resources, so to speak, the monetary value that were in the pockets of most Nigerians. So far as it may appear, it has not been easy, considering the processes, the circumstances, the situations. However, I think in a nutshell, it appears we are moving somewhere. But whether it is going to be better in the immediate future or not is yet to unveil itself.
All right. You've heard him. He talked about depending on the divide you belong to. For so many, it's very difficult. While some, it was a year of bliss. But generally speaking, according to him, the nation hasn't fared too good. Now, let's take a look at the end of this year. Before this administration get to experience fuel scarcity, but it's like that seems to be the thing of the past. Talking about fuel scarcity, it's like we have adequate supply right now of fuel, and that really alleviated the sufferings of Nigerians. I don't think that should be among the gain of this administration, at least towards the end of the year.
Well, as a matter of fact, you know, like we said earlier, you know, everything about governance is all about who gets what, when, and how. And some few years ago, there was a new political lexicon in Nigeria called stomach infrastructure. That lexicon came from the West, most of the Western states. Stomach infrastructure. As much as it might sound a little dumb, there are some senses in it, because it is only a man who has fed his stomach very well that will need fuel to run his vehicle. And of course, like I have said in several forums, at the point they were asking Bill Clinton, the then former US president, how does American democracy work? He said that there are three things that makes American democracy work. The first thing is the economy. sound economy. Second is sound economy. And third is sound economy. And so when there's a government in power, and that government is not taking a functional economy as a priority, that government ordinarily has nothing to offer to its people. And so when we talk about fuel, you're just trying to lay a foundation before answering your question as to whether the availability of fuel was a plus to the economy. I'll also be asking you another question. Is Nigeria not an oil-producing country? And if we produce crude, and we expect that a government should do everything within its powers to ensure that we that are the producer of that crude enjoys, free flow of petroleum products. And so it's like when you are paying tax to the government, and the government is now building a road, and you are now clapping for that government. The government is using your money to build the road. And so there's no kudos for them building that road, because it is their duty, their responsibility, to ensure that these things are provided. And so, that there's no fuel scarcity. To me, my own opinion, it should not be a plus to any person, because that is our product. We produce the product. And giving it back to us, we shouldn't be clapping for you. And so what we're talking about is that I hope we are going to touch the health sector.
Of course we will.
And so when we come to that, I'll make my own opinion. But talking from the area we are in right now, the stomach infrastructure in Nigeria, we never saw it at all, as far as 2019 is concerned.
All right, that is your own opinion.
Yes.
Now from what he is dwelling on the stomach infrastructure, but economically speaking, don't you think we at least would perform to a considerable level and height economically? Barrister, thank God, please take it up from there.
Okay.
Well, I want to say that to a very large extent, the government have fared well with respect to the issue of fuel scarcity. How they have been able to achieve that, I do not know the details. But I think since they have been able to ensure that we're not experiencing that in the now, they should be appreciated. Because we know what we were suffering ab initio before now. And so, whatever magic they have been able to use in doing it, because at every point in leadership, somebody has failed, you will tend to need to appreciate another leader who has achieved that feat where a previous leader failed. Even though, like he rightly said, these are things that we ought to enjoy by rights. But because we have not enjoyed it for a while, and it appeared it was no longer even a right for us, we now need to say, oh, thank you for this much you've done. Because leadership itself is not easy. It's more easier to speak words than to put them into action when you're faced with these realities. Having said that, I will not fail to mention that with respect to certain areas, for instance, the border closure, the rice price on the increase, there are a lot government still needs to do in that area, considering the fact that the prices have increased beyond expectation. And I think governments have a duty to be able to address that particular issue, because rice, as it were today, is a very common and stable food in Nigeria, and we all need it. Then for the stomach infrastructure, I want to say that when we talk about stomach infrastructure, it's actually a product of a society that has failed or is almost failing. Because if the system were actually that which it ought to be, any hardworking, at least somebody who could put in 8-10 hours a day, should be able to take care of his stomach. That should not be the job of government. All government needs to do is to create the enabling environment where people can eke out a living from legitimate transactions and business. Be that as it may, even after saying that, I am also an advocate that, look, every system comes from a tough position to an easy position. All we need to do as individuals, sometimes we see government failing. Government is not just failing because it wants to fail. Government is not finding setback because it wants to find setback. We all are part of the creation of this system and the creation of this government. I sympathize with us so much as a nation because most times when we create these problems, either by our actions or inactions, we tend to behave as if we were not expecting the requisite responsibility attached to those actions and inactions. For instance, I think before, let me just use this example. Before Orji Uzokalo was detained and convicted, he had so many friends. He had so many Nigerians who were possibly benefiting from those he supposedly loot and theft-free of our resources, who encouraged him, who told him, go ahead, it's a good thing, either by your action or inaction, provided you are able to benefit from it. And so, whatever he has done or that has been alleged to do when he was in office, the aftermath responsibility, the aftermath effect, which most times is negative under this circumstance, is going to fall on all of us. And nobody will escape it because some of those money were supposed to be meant for actual social amenities that will improve the life and circumstances of our people. But one person stole it or took it, and then other persons who were close by clapped for him and celebrated him, got titles, got what we call the accolades. Even though some of us know that genuinely this cash that this man appears to have used or is using for this particular event was not genuinely made.
So you're blaming it right now on Nigerians.
So it is a whole lot of us, on all of us as Nigerians, to begin to take the right steps, act the right kind of action, and show the responsibility attached to this activity such that, for instance, those in government presently are close to some of us, they are friends to some of us, and when they come, they give us peanuts from these supposedly stolen or ill-gotten wealth, and we celebrate them all over. And then tomorrow we want to blame them for the malfunctioning of the system. But if we as a people, by understanding and by knowledge, begin to appreciate that these guys didn't do rightly and we should put them at where they ought to be for not doing rightly, there's nobody that is stupid. They will take a remorse and begin to think of actually improving the system and doing those things that will make us better off.
All right, now, drawing a leap from what he said, talking about heaping some of the blames on Nigerians, take a look at the fuel pump price. No scarcity, but there is a hike in transportation fare. Can you relate this to the economy? Nigerians dealing with Nigerians. Barrister Banefo.
Yes, I think my learned friend, with all due respect to him, went a little bit too far when making reference to the case of Orji Uzokalo. I expect that it will be too premature to make reference to that case now, because the matter has just left the court. The man has a right to appeal against that judgment. And even when he gets to the Court of Appeal, whatever is the outcome, the man has also have right to go to the Supreme Court. So in my own humble opinion, I think it is premature to make any reference to that case right now until that case gets to the Supreme Court. Whatever is the decision of the Supreme Court, we cannot draw an inference from that. But as it is right now.
But did he tell you that he's going to appeal, he's going to Supreme Court?
I'm telling you that it is very, very premature.
Likely.
It's very, very premature to talk about it now until the matter gets to the Supreme Court. Whatever the Supreme Court says finally, we can then make a comment on it on a platform like this.
Okay, fine, no problem.
So, what is your question? Let me recap.
So you're talking about the origins of Carlo thing. I was just there in your memory. I'm talking about Nigerians inflicting pains on Nigerians.
Yes,
there is no fuel scarcity, but...
Let me say this.
All right.
We can't continue to deceive ourselves.
Okay.
Government owes a responsibility to the people. And the facts are there. The facts are there. From what is happening in this country, we have not seen anything at all to show that we are heading to anywhere.
How?
So it is not a matter of people inflicting injury on any person.
Yeah.
The government is like a referee. They hold the ass. And so when you look at countries like, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and see how such countries are moving, and see how the governments are putting everything in place, you see that it is responsibility of the government to at least set a standard and then now expect us to now follow. The kind of governance we have in this country is not giving us the opportunity to say maybe the followership has failed. No. The followership has not failed at all. I differ from that position because...
But that's what he said.
That's what he said. That's what he's saying.
Doing the right thing. Some of us, not all of us, some of us.
I depart seriously from his position because it's not a matter of followership right now. It's a matter of what is our people putting up. For instance, if there's an election between you and my very good Malian friend, I will not vote for you. It is clear that we voted for you. At the end of the voting, the presiding body now said that this man wins the election. I text the matter of leadership. I has failed to offer what we expect from him as a government. Do you not blame it on the masses who has voted for Wilson Omasho? So the whole thing is that the government to have in power, we expect them at least to look at these developing nations who have made a success in their countries and see how do we copy this model. So when you look at Qatar today, you not look at where they're coming from. When you look at United Arab Emirates today, you now look at where they're coming from. When you look at Singapore today, you look at where they're coming from. What stops us from copying these models? Because right now, we don't even know where we're heading to. We don't just know where we're heading to. Like you said, like I will make reference to the health sector. We'll talk about health sector today. We'll talk about power today. When we go to this area, you see that we are not heading to anywhere. And we as a people owe it as a duty to ourselves to ensure that this country is being developed. We talk about, if we don't go to the education sector, we talked about the studying environment as to whether do we really have the enabling environment to study, to develop our children. We will talk about the lecturers, the professors. They look at the researchers. Is government empowering this gentleman there?
So that for what you're saying, the leadership hasn't given us the opportunity to really assess the followership. Is that what you're saying right now?
This is what I'm saying, yes.
I'll come back to you now. You just hold on. Now, we've talked about the economy. From what both of you agreed to, it's like we didn't fare too well in the year 2019, economically speaking. Now, despite the fact that we had a report that inflation rate dropped. People like saying that it's not reflecting on the people, but according to reports, politicians in Nigeria said the thing dropped in a way. Well, now let's leave the economy. Now let's take a look at politics in 2019. I want to start off from you, Barrister. Why are you laughing, Barrister? I'm going back. All right, now let's take a look at the political terrain. In the year 2019, is it what Nigerians should really clamor for to continue coming in the coming year 2020?
First and foremost, I want to say that it's no longer rocket science for us to know that a society that is not having knowledge will actually toll towards destruction. My people perish for lack of knowledge. It's obvious. You see, what my colleague here said just now with respect to the fact that, we expect leaders to perform. All those who are leaders today, as it were once followers. some 8 years ago, some 4 years ago, some 3 years ago. They were all followers. And then responsibility fell on them. They were not prepared for leadership. Or it appears they were not prepared for the enormosity of the leadership they found themselves. And so it falls back on all of us as a people. Tomorrow I'll be appointed in an office. If I'm not prepared for that office, I can't perform. There's no rocket science about it. And after I leave the office, I become a follower, I start complaining and pointing fingers. So again, it boils down to the fact that Nigerians, on the average, are not prepared to grow, in quote. Until they get themselves ready, by knowledge, by understanding, we'll continue to complain. And even when we are moving, it also appears that we are not moving, because again, when the speed is so slow, it appears you're not moving. Back to your question, the political system in the country, are we advancing or are we retrogressing? Again, you and I will have to sit down and ask ourselves, what have we found, what have we defined as retrogression, and what have we defined as progress? If your friend is the one able to rig today and get success from rigging, because he is your friend and is close to you, it becomes progressive, irrespective of the manner and standard in which he got that political office. But if he's not your friend and he's not somebody that is close to you, you cannot point fingers that are negative. So it's a whole lot of a system that is not ready. And because we in the majority are not ready, we cannot produce leaders that are ready. And that is where we face great challenges. Like I earlier said, we drum for our friends who are successful. We do not ask them how you made this success. Did you follow standard? Did you follow principles? Just take educational sector, for instance. A lot of parents are helping their children all through the kind of systems to gain admission to graduate from the university. And when a medical doctor who is not properly taught or not properly prepared eventually kill your child in the hospital, you start complaining. But somehow you were the one who gave the admission, even when you knew that the system or the man was not prepared for that kind of task. So it's a whole lot of systemic problem. Even though I agree with him that leadership has to carve out a niche, he has to be ahead. But how does he get ahead if he is not prepared? And so politically, you will look at the country, you will say, well, plus and minus, have we advanced or have we not advanced? Again, you must set standard. What was our standard as a nation ab initio? Did we say that we wanted the umpire to be unbiased? Did we all agree that we wanted an unbiased system? Did we all say, okay, the voting system must be such that it is transparent and fair? If that is what we said, then it will be appropriate to say, oh, we didn't achieve that standard. But if inwardly, I'm not talking about what we say outwardly. When you hear the INEC representative, for instance, outwardly say we are doing true and fair elections. You talk about the security system, we are doing true and fair elections. That is outwardly. But inwardly, what did we set as standard? Then those of us who are not in any of this official capacity, but in our own private situation, were we desperate enough to say we wanted our man to win anyhow? Or we were saying our man should win following due processes? So if our man was expected to win, follow due processes, and he won, we could celebrate. But if we now know that our man won without following due processes, we ought to caution and refrain. But do we actually refrain? That's the question.
Barrister Mbadefo, over to you. Politically speaking, from what he said, he's still heaping the blame on the followers.
Oh, yes, he's entitled to his opinion. But how that can be achievable is another point entirely. The truth of the matter is this. If you are a married man, if you are married, you remain the head of the family, and the buck ends on your table. So you dictate what happens in the house. If you have children at home and they misbehave, it's the duty of the father to caution the children and say, this is wrong, don't do this next time. So a father at home is head of his family. So a government in power is like also the head of the country. You know, in the 70s, during the military era, we used to have what is called maybe 10 years development program. And they sit down and say, within the next 10 years, this is what we intend to achieve. This is achievable. And they work towards it. And just yesterday, during the time of Abacha, we had what the government called Vision 2020. And then when the civilians came on board and up to date, I don't think such policies have been put in place and say this is what we intend to achieve the next 10 years, the next 5 years. Again, we have an electoral body that are not always prepared. And after the last election, we expected that the government in power will look back at these ad hoc staffs and look at how we can create a system where we have permanent staffs for INEC, who will now look at what we did about a few months ago and said, okay, look at what we intend to improve. We intend to improve on this. Let us try this, let us try that. Like at last election, most people canvass for electronic voting. Nothing stops INEC from doing a kind of mock electronic voting now and say, look at the flaws and say, okay, by the time we put it in place, look at what we intend to, the challenges we intend to have, and look at how we intend to, do those challenges. So we don't have to wait till another election again. We start to do the whole thing all over again. Unfortunately, Nigerians learn geology a night after the earthquake. Ordinarily, as a country, we are supposed to study geology and not even know how to avert earthquake. Or if it happens, how do we rescue our people? This country is blessed that we don't even have some of these natural disasters here. You can see what happened in the Philippines and other nations. The problem is this: if we cannot manage ourselves politically, then if it goes beyond this, what can we do? And so the umpire, of course, has to be stimulated by the government in power. The government must have a vision to say, we have made all this mistake, how do we correct it in the future? But a situation whereby we're not doing any of this, then the tragedy is going to be that these little children that will take to school every morning with Indomie and biscuit and water bottle, we wouldn't know the kind of nation we may be handing over to them by tomorrow.
All right.
And any country that is not thinking about tomorrow, then that country is making a very huge mistake. And so my take is this, is that if this is our country, and if this is a country, it is the duty of the government in power to ensure that they look at other nations and then ask themselves questions. How did they get to this stage? And then how do we now get that same stage?
All right. If you just joined us, this is This Morning on ITV. We are taking a look at 2019 in retrospect, the gains and of course pains of Nigerians. And I have two wonderful analysts here with me in the studio, legal practitioners, and they are having their own views, their own opinion. It has nothing to do with ITV, but make sure that the follow the rules and regulations governing the airwaves. Now, from what Barrister Banefo talked about, he said the bulk of the blame should go to the electoral umpire. But some of the opinion of the judiciary didn't even help the issue. when you talk about election in Nigeria, the year in review 2019. And no both of you are legal practitioners. We'll take it up from there. Barrister, thank God. Judiciary as a kind of, you know, a setback, so to speak, in giving Nigeria good political feel the year 2019.
My take is not difficult to understand. I keep hammering on the fact that the world, the country, and all of us are a web. You can't give what you don't have, and you cannot be isolated from the system. Somehow, unfortunately for our country, we have laid a foundation on ignorance, and we're trying to build on it and trying to get the results that are attached to knowledge. And these are the problems. At least the last time I checked the Bible, it says, what can the righteous do when the foundations be destroyed? It's going to be very difficult, if not impossible. And when you talk about the judiciary, where both of us have a whole lot of stake in, they are not going to be also immune or independent on the challenges. Because when you check the laws, as it were, the judges cannot do anything other than to work on the facts that are presented before them. And forming an opinion from those facts, they give their judgments. Like he rightly argued ab initio, that even the judgment of the lower court as it relates to Ojius or Kalu may not be correct if we wait for the matter to go to Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. And that was his position, that the lower court can be flawed. He therefore holds the opinion that it's possible that the lower court did not get enough facts or head in law, or there's a miscarriage of justice, as it were. But I think that is because the man in question I'm talking about is also a rich man. Because I know many cases that ended at the lower courts. If you steal a goat and you are convicted, I'm sure you don't have money to go to Court of Appeal and go to Supreme Court to try to get a different opinion. But because this man has a lot of weight behind him, a lot of our weight in quote, as decided by the lower court now, he can go to any court. If it was possible for him, he would go to even the court of God to ask for justice, because he feels that he is not on the side of justice, or he is not being fairly treated. That is maybe his position as of today.
All right, now
so,
to the political scene and the judiciary.
From the political scene and the judiciary, it's a whole lot of circumstances some of us do not have enough fact to talk about, because it is the judge itself who have the facts available to him or her and say, from these facts available, I have formed my opinion. If you are not satisfied, you can go to the upper courts or to the higher bench. And so, you cannot actually fault the judiciary in quotes, considering the fact that he or she or the judge has formed an opinion by what he or she is saying. Right. But back to the problem, like I earlier said, the judge is first a Nigerian before he became a judge. You and I are first Nigerians before we became our different professional callings. We have the executives, those who are trying to make sure the judgments are told in their favor. Were once what they were before they started contesting elections, and they were all returned back. So, if we are suffering from a quagmire I call a function of in-depth of ignorance, which we must deliberately make up our minds to improve upon and create a society that we supposedly desire. Because it is not just enough for you to say, I want a Nigerian to be like US. I want a Nigerian to be like UK. Where are those who wants to make it happen?
All right.
And that's the challenge.
Now you just tactfully move the blame away from the table of the judiciary. Probably like maybe because you are a legal practitioner, because there are some judgments that many Nigerians are not comfortable with.
Yes.
Even senior advocate, he talked about it, that this isn't the way they
That was their opinion.
As the judgment would be, and many Nigerians are heaping the blame on the judiciary when we talk about our own political situation. Barrister Anokwem Banefo, how do you feel about this? 2019, politics and the judiciary.
Yes, actually, the buck still go back to the executives, the government in power. The government in power, if you want a free and just society, a government in power should do everything within its powers to ensure that they have an independent judiciary. The government in power should do everything within their powers to ensure that the judiciary is independent in both funding and otherwise. A situation whereby the judiciary is not independent is being manipulated and funded by the executives. You don't expect anything from the judiciary. And because you expect to get an unbiased judiciary, a judiciary that will look at matters, a judiciary that will ensure that the court becomes the last hope of the common man, a judiciary that will ensure that justice is done, a judiciary that will ensure that equity have its day, a judiciary that will not be a member of any political party, a judiciary that will be neutral in all its decisions. And how do you get such a judiciary? Such a judiciary must be independent. The judiciary that judiciary will not be cowed by the executives. Judges in their houses sleeping will not have their windows and doors removed by the DSS at the wee hours of the day. Then we should have a judiciary that will respect the government in power to ensure that due process is followed in their actions, and not having a government that will ignore the Constitution and go to somebody's house and say you're a judge, and that we are arresting you for so and so offense, and that we have found $1 billion under your pillow without following due process. And also, for we to function, to move ahead, the only ingredient of success in any government, in any country, is to have a straightened judiciary. A situation whereby the judiciary is not functioning. You don't expect anything from that country. So today, let me come in here, sir. In the early days of the American Supreme Court, and in the case of Madison against Marbury, Marbury against Madison, the Supreme Court of US has this to say, that United States of America is a country of laws and not a country of men. The Supreme Court said in that case that United States of America is a country of laws, not a country of men. And it was on this premise that United States politics was built, and that of judiciary was equally, government was equally built. A situation whereby you now have a judiciary where a country, which is a country of men and not laws, the men now dictate what happens in that country.
So that what you're saying, judiciary are like powerless in Nigeria.
There are so many forces against judiciary in Nigeria. And so...
Are they powerless?
Well, the judiciary...
You talked about the country for law, not for men, because like what you're inferring right now, if I'm allowed to ask, is like yes. You are turning the statement inside out. It's like country of men and not of laws. Is that what you're saying? Yes, a situation whereby you have institutions that cannot function. They cannot function independently on their own. When you have men who is more powerful than institutions, the reverse that becomes the case. Right. So what we are saying is that we need, a free judiciary, a judiciary that is independent, a judiciary that can take decisions on their own without any influence from above. Okay.
you know.
All right.
So that is just it. So
all right.
the situation whereby it is the other way around. You can't get anything from that
and
system.
And according to you, that's what we're facing right now.
That
means in a way, the judiciary is being influenced by the men.
The judiciary is being cowed. It's being cowed by the executive. It's being cowed by the executive.
But the executive wouldn't agree to that. After all, for what you said, they said the evidence before the judge, and now you're saying they are being cowed. So how can you relate both of these two massive suggestions, being cowed and evidence? That means one way or the other, judiciary also is involved in the kind of politics we had in Nigeria in the year 2019, good or bad. Do we agree to that?
Talk about evidence before the judge.
Good or bad, sir? Do we agree to that?
That
somewhere along the line, judiciary also is responsible partly, if not fully, in the kind of politics that Nigerians experienced in the year 2019.
That is not correct. That is not correct. That is not correct. Judiciary have ended up becoming the whipping child of this country. The judiciary have not gotten their own bidding as far as this government is in power is concerned. The judiciary has been so pushed to the wall that whatever you are getting out of it is just what is being produced because of the way the government in power has pushed the judiciary.
All right.
So,
well, you heard them. We talked about judiciary being the whipping child right now, and many of them may differ in their opinion because Barrister Thank God is laughing. I wouldn't want you to kind of react to that. Okay, we're taking a look at the year 2019 in retrospect, and
about security.
The gains and of course the pains of Nigerians. So many things to really talk about, but want to zoom in into just two aspects today: the economy and of course politics. You can't talk about politics without talking about judiciary, because get to here, we'll go into court, from the court to the highest level of the bench or whatever. You get to see results that really shook so many Nigerians to their foundation. Be like, what? You mean the judiciary gave this judgment? But what do we know? Now, we can't talk about our country without talking about our state, Edo State. 2019. First, thank God. Why are you smiling? How did we fare?
I think I also have a right to smile. Let me enjoy that.
2019, Edo State, the pains and gains in the year 2019. Let's talk about the politics, which seems to be in the front burner right now because the nation is there looking at Edo State, and this is year 2019. How do you feel about it? Barrister Thank God Iluobe.
So far, so good. With respect to the political happenings in the state, I think it's not out of place, because where humans are, they tend to differ, they tend to negotiate, they tend to reconcile, they tend to come to compromises, as it were. So these are the ingredients with which we live, knowing that we actually are interwebbed. We cannot do without each other. So far, so good. I think Edo State has been better for it so far, using the previous systems as a measure, because you must have a standard before you talk about actuals, meaning that you must say, oh, this is what we expected, this is what it ought to be, before we will now say, oh, what did we achieve? And then when you do comparison, you know whether it has been positive or negative. And for me, I have a standard of judgment. I use that standard considering the system generally. So my standard of judgment is that, considering the whole nation, considering the state, and considering the individuals that are embedded in this nation, the kind of difficult people I see every day
in Edo State,
the kind of people I interact with, their technical know-how, their information, their mental capacity, I will say, so far, whoever is leading this group of people must have tried to have led them to this point. I think that was somehow the case of Moses some time ago, as reflected in the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
When he took them out of Egypt and they got to somewhere, they said, Moses, you promised us a promised land. And
looking at the suffering here, it would have been better for us to go back to Egypt and start eating the melon soup instead of that promised land that we are never getting to. And so Moses got so discouraged that you guys that were slaves some years ago and have been doing everything with God's assistance to ensure you got here, you're telling me you want to go back to Egypt? And I think sometimes Nigerians find themselves in that situation where is that, take us to where we were coming from. Where we are now is too bad. And the leader will get confused and worried. With all I'm putting into use, with all the energies, my mental capacity and all that, this is what you guys tell me to go back. So it can be very frustrating for a leader. Having had some leadership position and having interacted with Nigerians and Edolites, I know that leaders are trying. I know that leaders are trying.
Okay.
You understand? So having said that so far, apart from the feud between the governments of the day, that is Obaseki and Adams, Ali Oshomole, the erstwhile governor of the state, supposedly his godfather, I think so far so good. It has not been a bad situation. And I would also tell them that, look, in my own position, you don't have any reason why you should be public. Because it's a father and son relationship. All right. You guys try and reconcile, and you move ahead. It's better than the otherwise, because...
Thank you. That's the last line of the discourse because of time. Edo State, politically speaking, how do we defend the year 2019 in retrospect?
Yeah, if you ask me in one word, I would say that we've never had it as good as this, as far as the incumbent government is concerned. The young man there have done so much with his team. You know, he has a wonderful team that is very, very wonderful, and it's not been as good as this. And like my lady colleague said, you know, sometimes it's difficult to manage people, and we give credit to the governor. And I feel that whatever that is happening here internally, the wranglings and all that, is part of the game. And at the end of the day, the wishes of the people will definitely prevail.
All right, you've heard from both of them. It's a continuum, okay? Tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, you just name it, you get to see 2019 in review. We just can't stop talking about it till we enter into the year 2020. Then we'll not set an agenda for 2020. It's like, you know, we keep talking to get to inform, to get to know what is happening in our society. Gentlemen, I really want to appreciate both of you for your wonderful analysis. I really want to appreciate you. And to you out there, our viewers, it's their own opinion. It has nothing to do with ITV, okay?